This is the outline we are using. We finished off a little bit on, probably mostly on verse 16 last week, which puts us at the start of business endeavors. So we're going to look at this Isha Hael, this woman, this excellent wife, this woman of valor, her business endeavors, and we did look a little bit last week. We took 5 points on her productivity, what her hands can produce, and we looked at verse 16. So let's just read 16 through 18, get a flavor for where we're going. Proverbs 31, verse 16. She considers a field and buys it. From her earnings she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She senses that her gain is good. Her lamp does not go out at night. Now, once again, I want to tell you something. Proverbs is not saying, take this verbatim everything. Okay, I want you to understand this. Did she do some of these things verbatim? Yes. But for today, and the understanding we have, it's more of a principle for life. So you got to learn to build some principles. That's why every time I say, here's a principle from this. We've been going through Proverbs 31 and getting a lot of principles. And what we're trying to do is in other words, Proverbs also says, train up a child in the way it should go, and it shall not depart when it gets old. That's a principle. So if the child does depart, goes his wayward, and you say, oh my goodness, I didn't do a good job of training this child. No, that child also has individual responsibilities. But the principle is you should be training your children. You are responsible for training. But at some point, that child is no longer a child. That child becomes an adult, and now they are responsible for their decisions. What point that is, and this is one of those great theological debates, when does a child become an adult and responsible for their own decisions? That depends on the child. I'm still waiting to make my own good decisions. Still a child. No, I'm just, you know what I'm saying. Every child has their own, when all of a sudden you say, wow, they're starting to make good decisions, and treat them as an adult. I think that's our failure. Many times we don't treat people as adults. So let's look at verse 17. We really did cover 16, and I really don't want to go over it too many times. It says she girds herself or girds her loins with strength. In other words, what she does is she prepares herself to work. She prepares herself for work. She's not only necessarily physically fit, but she's mentally, spiritually fit for the given task. Again, what we're looking at is the idea. I gave you the outline. Just for looks, we can always go back. When we talk about strength, it's not a one-dimensional word. We're not talking physical, what a physique, and she can keep going. She's like the ever-ready worker, you know, the little rabbit that keeps going. She can always do. But she prepares herself for it. I think one of the things we lack as people is preparation, that we have a task ahead of us. How do we prepare to do those tasks? We just haphazardly just hit and miss different tasks. And what this basically says, too, is she's oriented to preparation. It's kind of interesting because where it says is she makes her arms strong. She makes her arms strong. This word here basically says she makes her arms firm. In other words, she could bear up under the job. She's prepared for the job. She's strong in pressure. So when we talk about strength, we're not only talking mentally, physically, spiritually. Yeah, I would think emotionally would fit in realms of mentality. She's emotionally strong. In other words, when the pressure, you think about it, when are most people the worst is when pressure hits. I can handle the normal everything today things, and I'm not talking about, wow, one big boom, but I'm talking about pressure situation. I love anybody ever heard of popcorn theory? Not the Popeye theory, the popcorn theory. In other words, most people can hit, boom, here's a large chaos, I can handle that. But when you have one thing after another, after another, after another, and that's kind of Job's situation, even though it was big popcorn, everything kept coming. Those are what I'm talking about, pressure, not one situation. I was watching a news commentary about one of the news ladies has cancer, and they were showing, she was documenting all the cancer treatments and all the pressures of that and so on and so forth. And then right in the middle of it, she goes, Then I found out my dad had pancreatic cancer and died 2 weeks later after she found it out. So that's pressure, and then more pressure on top of it, and that's the kind of idea behind. Not that it's cancer is the biggest pressure, but again, she's able to bear up under a variety of stresses. So that's why her arms are strong. You know, when I was a kid, you always had a picture of Atlas holding up the world. So your arms are used to bear, the idiom there is to bear up under pressures. So a principle we can get out of this, again we're going back to the idea of principles. The principles we get out of this is the virtuous woman is capable of demanding work. And this keeps her strong. And you could just put in this package. Remember, when I'm saying strong right now, this is the package. So I'm saying it keeps her physically strong, because we walk around and our women aren't like, and that's not what it meant. So a virtuous woman is capable of demanding work, and this keeps her strong. My dad used to have something that was kind of funny, and I'll keep saying it forever. He passed it down. My dad used to, one of the things he did as part of his job was find people jobs. So he was like the high school job hunter for all the kids in high school that needed, pardon me? Yeah, but it was different back then. It was called DECA. So, not that helps you. But the idea behind it is, he says most people don't want to find work because they're afraid they'll find a job and have to work. And the idea behind this, though, is this woman is not afraid of work, especially hard work. She finds it, and I think the idea, again, the principle behind it is she's organized enough and strong enough that when it comes upon her, she's prepared for it. And I think preparation makes you able to do a job. So, and I think that's what's a lot of people's fear is, I'm not prepared for the job. I don't have the right tool. I don't have this. And before you know it, the job is longer than it should take. So my adage under this that I would say, a little thing, is don't be afraid of a little hard work. I've never known anybody to die from a little hard work. Now, we're not talking slave labor and digging trenches till you drop dead, and that's different. But we're just talking about normal. And I think about it. Today's woman, today's people, not just because I even did a few washes this week. But I'm saying we're not out there, down the river beating it against a rock and in the scrub boards and stuff. We're just throwing a load in the wash and throwing it to the dryer and that kind of thing. And when Lizzie's not home, I mix darks and whites and lights and. But the point is, it's not that hard. We have conveniences. So the problem is we don't prepare ourselves for we meander. Verse 18 says, she senses that her gain is good. Her lamp does not go out at night. She senses that her gain is good. This word senses, it has the flavor behind it. Believe it or not, the flavor, senses. It means to taste, to perceive, or to eat. Now it's kind of interesting. So it says she senses. So what it's saying actually behind here is that there is a variety of discerning-like action. Discerning-like action. She has a sense. Her senses are acute to what would be good for her family, for herself. It's kind of interesting when you look at the words to put in, the idea of eating, the idea of tasting. We had an adage when the kids were little in our house. You taste it. I don't care if you don't want to eat it. Everything is tasted at our table. And then if you taste it and say, ooh, I can't eat that anymore, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, you're not going to go in the refrigerator and get a peanut butter and jelly sandwich kind of deal, but you have to taste what's there. And what it is this person is developing a flavor to say, okay, is this good for the family? Is this good for me? Is this good for my husband? So it's sort of like try it and see if it fits kind of deal. And this idea makes it valuable in the house. Think about that. It's kind of nice to have the same. I wouldn't want a wife that says, I really like liver and I'm going to make him eat it. It doesn't work. So the idea behind that, a virtuous woman knows her work adds value to the house because she senses what's good, and that's a valuable asset. A virtuous woman knows her work adds value to the house. I like the second part of this verse because I read this to Lizzie a couple of times. The reason I said that is because Lizzie's a night person. I'm a morning person. In other words, she can go like till 1 o'clock in the morning, and then that's it. Boom, the rest of it, and I can go to about 10:30, 11, and but I'm up at, before the rooster. I got to wake the rooster to crow. So even now she looked at me, she goes, "Why are you up every day so early?" Well, this morning my pre-op today took longer than my surgery will take. It was wild. So, but the point behind it, I had to be up early to go to the hospital to get pre-op, and I was the first one up this morning. And it's easy for me. I look at these guys and say, "Get out of bed." Because there's nobody in my house that's a morning person, but it says the lamp does not go out at night. It's kind of interesting because the only light at night was a lamp. But the lamp was also used interchangeably for what gave prosperity, what gave joy, what gave activity. In other words, there was nothing to be able to do at night without light. And you got to understand, it wasn't like how many remember after Hurricane Andrew what it was like being in the dark? Okay, there's a few. That's being in the dark. We're not really, and that society was in the dark without lamp. And that lamp was part of, in other words, if you left your light on at night, it was a sign, it was an ancient sign of prosperity. And there was safety, because what happens at night in a society that's basically agricultural, you're walking at night with no light. Think about this, you're in other words, you're not walking down Biscayne. You're walking in a very rough environment, lots of potholes and stuff. You'll end up in your face. So you always had a light. The light gave you a safe way to walk the path. Yeah. Well, most of you didn't go to Exxon or OPEC or something. But yeah. So the idea behind it is it really uses a figure of speech. Don't think if somebody's going to say, because I said that I used to use this for Lizzie, it's not for a stay up all night and work kind of idea. It's more an idiom or a figure of speech for a home that is lit is happy and secure. The safety idea. So a woman does things to make her house happy, secure. Yeah, go ahead. No, because again, the way it's used here, in other places maybe, but here the way it's used is her lamp doesn't go out. In other words, we just got through talking about pressures and things that are going on in light, and it's really easy to get that glow off you. And you look and you say, "What?" I don't know about you. I can read people probably better than I can read myself. And I look and I say, "You had a bad day, didn't you? Things are kind of rough in there." No. Well, only for the fact that they use the lamps. You're talking about the No. Well, again, the idea is you covered your lamp, you couldn't see. But the idea of the security, you mean? No. Right. Well, it's the same thing. Well, you could use it because if you have an inner joy, why would you hide that from anybody? Somebody said, "Why are you like the way you are?" Well, not you. No, but if you say, "Well, what's got you? What's?" And you say, "Well, it's nothing. I'm just having a good day," kind of thing. I love it when people say, "Why are you always smiling?" Well, let me tell you, sit down. Because it's really good. And what we've got to understand, though, here, this woman keeps her house in a situation that people can see. What's the most contagious thing? Ever think about it? Other than a yawn? Because I think a yawn's pretty contagious. I smile. Think about it. You ever go to a comedian? I've been to comic shows, and you go in. What's the mindset you're going into a comic with? He's gonna make me laugh. And yeah, I know. Pathetic day. It doesn't get any now either. But the idea behind it is you go in there with a mindset the guy's going to make you laugh. Therefore, he could say, sky's green. And go, see? Got you all. But that is contagious because the idea is you're putting this mindset. And a mom's the same way. A mother or wife, if she's happy, it makes the home happy to start with. Yeah. And a lot of comics I went to, they needed some fake glass. So a virtuous woman has a vibrant and prosperous home. A vibrant or joyous, happy home. And she makes it that way. Now, I'm not saying you can't have a bad day, ladies. But we should have the bad day and move on. Because somebody's going to say, you want people to be perfect. It's a principle. When I say a principle, it means, on the average, are you happy? You say, yeah, on the average, I'm happy. I have bad days. Guess what? So does everybody else. Get in line. But if you say, all my days have been pretty rotten, I'm a miserable person. You ever walk into somebody and say, I can't even talk to that person. She's always miserable. She always has a negative, or he. Yeah. Look, these guys got a target. But the idea behind it is that doesn't it make it very hard to walk at that person and just have a normal conversation because they're going to say they're going to say something nasty about somebody. Pardon me? Oh yeah. So, but on the opposite end, if somebody's always perky and happy, there's a lady on my route. She just purposely comes out to see me because she knows I always got something goofy to say to her to make. She says during a hurricane she came out and she says, and you could see like that this is getting to her the pressures and she's going. Like that, and I go, what's the matter? She goes, another hurricane. I go, we're all going to die, we're all going to die, we're all going to die. And she's looking at me like, are you nuts? And all of a sudden it was gone. Her facial expressions were gone. You know what I'm saying? Because I changed her outlook. And I think that's what we have to do is learn to overlook some of these things and say, Proverbs 13:9. Turn to Proverbs 13:9. And I think this may help a little bit with what you said, Mark. Will. It's an idea here. Proverbs 13:9 again, a principle, right? What? Did you guys do this last night or something? Oh. Proverbs 13:9 says, "The light of the righteous rejoices; the lamp of the wicked goes out." So the idea is, at some point, don't mark that verse for somebody. Verse 19. Proverbs 31:19. Let's go to 19. Something deeper? Yeah. Well. What? No. Well, it's not saying, again, when you see these things, people, remember, who is the audience, and again, what dispensation we're in, that doesn't say saved and unsaved. So, there's a lot of wicked saved people, let me tell you right now. It depends on the context. Again, context. Well, there's a difference. Yeah, but you can be. We're not going to. Verse 19. Verse 19. Verse 19. She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hands grasp the spindle. Now, I don't know how many of y'all have done this lately, but I think we need to get down a little bit with the distaff and the spindle. I read this sometimes. I've had kids walk up to me. I don't relate to the Bible. Well, guess what? Neither do I when it says distaff and spindle. Distaff. And I made it, and I hit her so hard it made a spindle. Oh, it's going to be a bad joke night. What it's basically saying here, though, it was the wise responsibility in the Old Testament, again, Old Testament times, to make the clothing. To make the clothing. And if we go back and refer, I was thinking about Samuel, when Samuel was born, because Nicole and Kevin have mentioned to to me that they want to dedicate Dale. And I said, it's kind of interesting. The only thing that you see a child is dedicated is Samuel. But he was dedicated and basically sent out of the house. He was sent to go live with somebody else. But while he was there living, I knew this was coming. I knew I was walking right into this. When he was given over to Eli to live, every year, Hannah made Samuel a new robe to wear. So then in 1 Samuel 2:19, you'll see that it's actually her job. And in Acts 9, chapter 9, it talks about Lydia. She was a seller of purple. And the idea behind that was clothing. And the closer the color was to purple was the more astute the clothing was. Which is kind of cool, I guess. So. Yeah, they squeezed that worm to death. Oh, that's the other one. No, there's worm is purple. Worm is. I'm sorry. Well, the idea behind this is a virtuous woman is creative in the home and skilled in her responsibilities. Again, you have to know how to use a distaff and a spindle. I guess today would be a Game Boy and a remote control. I don't know. Finger sewing machine and no, because you got to make the yarn. The credit card. Yeah, but the idea is this was a weaver's loom and a sewing thing. Okay, so she knows how to pick the best skeins of yarn and stuff like that. Okay. But the idea is she's creative in the home and she's skilled. The thing when I was studying this verse, I don't know, maybe I'm a little crazy. What? Sound of Music. Remember when she came into the Sound of Music and she looked at the curtains and she said, those make good clothes. We're getting rid of the curtains, I'll make clothes. And she made all the kids' clothes. I don't know how she did it in like one scene. But, I mean, all these kids had the curtains while she was singing. While she was all happy and cleaning. And you never seen Sound of Music? He's surprised. We're going to have a men's night Sound of Music, okay? That'll go over well. 400 times I've seen that too. Anyway, verse 20. But the idea is this woman is able, he knows the song, but he doesn't see the book. Pardon me? Okay, we're not going in on this. Verse 20. Verse 20. And a lot of this, if you notice, just so you notice, we're back to, remember we did Hebrew poetry and we talked about synonymous parallelism, where one part of the verse and the next part of the verse is the same thing. So that's where we're back at. Verse 20 says, she extends her hands to the poor and stretches out her hands to the needy. So both these parts of the verse are saying the same thing. But the idea is just what happened? I started getting popping peas. The idea here, though, is the idea of poor is someone who is needy. Someone who is needy. And the idea is there's little difference. Listen to this. And it's just in one letter. The first part of the verse says the hand to the poor. The second part of the verse says her hands to the needy. I know we're not trying to be nitpicky, but there's a difference between giving a hand to the poor and taking your hands to the needy. Tell me what the difference is. No. Come on. Okay. Okay. Well, it's a little difference, and I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. One is more of ability to give aid in form of a handout. When you put a handout, you're usually giving them something, money, a piece of clothing, something that's boom. When you're putting your hands on it, it's basically saying, I'm ready to help you with that situation. I want to aid you. So one is more the idea of giving a maybe you can only help somebody once. I can give you $5, go get yourself something, kind of thing. The other one is I'm ready to help you along with this and get you to a different point. What was that adage a long time ago? I'd rather give a man a bag of seeds and teach him how to feed himself, or a cane or a pole, how to fish, than to give him a piece of fish and walk away. So sometimes you have to give somebody a piece of fish. Sometimes you have to teach them how to fish. How's that? So that's the only variation. It's still helping somebody that needs help when you see it. And this lady's ready to be available for either. You were going to say something more? Yeah, go ahead. Okay. For the first one? Okay. Yeah. Right. And I think we got, all of us, but this is, again, speaking of women, I think it's kind of interesting. Who's easier to give a hand out and help somebody? Isn't it a woman? Aren't women more compassionate, more emotionally involved with somebody than before men? Bum should be working. What? Play football, yeah. No. The word for poor is a need, and it really basically means needy. And the other word is ebyon, ebion, and it basically means those that are in need. It's real slim differences. That's what. I don't find that big a nuance difference. Yeah. In other words, be available. And I think this is where it comes in a little discernment. What is the problem? So a woman can look at that and say, they only need a meal. We'll bring them a meal. But this person doesn't need a meal. This woman needs to know how to do what she. In other words, she may have I've been in people's houses. I have nothing to eat, and they go, "Well, you got stuff in the closet. You just don't know how to cook." So the woman may come by and say, "Here's how you combine this, and this, and come up with this." Somebody gave me combine this, and this, and I came out with glue. So sometimes we got to learn how to put things together, because flour and water and whatever else makes glue. And if you do it right, it makes biscuits. So it depends on how you put it. Sometimes it's been there too. Yeah, that's true too. So a virtuous woman is charitable and helps those in need. A virtuous woman is both charitable and helps those in need. So it's kind of interesting because, again, you see a lot of places where charity, the kind that gives hands out, comes from the woman's side. That's why, again, if you look at just the emphasis of marriage, is it man, woman? Yeah, because the things that's needed to balance a marriage comes from the woman's side, it comes from the man's side. Some women would give the farm away. Everybody comes by, take this, take that, and then you come home and there's where a man will say, okay, that's enough, honey, back off. So there's balance there. Verse 21 says, she is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. Now again, scarlet is the finest materials available for that person. Now it's not the finest. I'm not going to go out and buy silk suits. Okay, but it's the finest available within that idea that she finds a way to clothe her family for the. In other words, okay, honey, all we have is linen, tablecloth. I'm going to make you something, and you go out in that deep snow. No, she'll go out and find something that's adequate for the weather conditions. And don't you always, I don't know, when I was a kid, every time you heard a commercial for Campbell Soup, Mom was yelling at the kid to go put your galoshes and your coat on before you go out. And then the kid came back all in, soaking wet, and the boots were wet, and then Mom would be shoving hot Campbell Soup in the kid's mouth. But Mom made sure the kid was prepared for the environment. So that's, I think, the idea behind that, if anything, is the virtuous woman has a positive outlook on the future, because she has prepared accordingly. She has prepared her family for the elements. She is not afraid of the snow. I like that. And it's also kind of interesting because does clothing communicate something? I don't know about you. The fad today, and this is Eric speak. The fad today where the kids wear the boxer shorts up here and the pants down to their knees just drives me insane. Just drives me insane. And if I had a son doing that, I'd staple gun his pants up to here. He'd look like Urkel, just to tick him off. He'd walk home, oh, I can't get his pants off, Dad. So I just, and I think a mother would look at that and say, you know, your clothing make you. It's kind of interesting. See, go in a boardroom or something where men are gathered together and like check the labels. You know, they want the finest stuff in the boardroom meeting. They want to look good, you know. Come to my house, and Mark came over one time. I don't know how long back this was. And I was wearing like sweats and a t-shirt hanging. Mark says, "You're just like me when you're hanging around the house." Yeah, duh. That's what I wanted. I wanted to just hang around, look sloppy, kind of thing. But that's fine. But the idea here is clothing communicates. And what was the most powerful color? Purple. I know it sounds kind of hokey today because most of you guys think, oh, that's a pimp's color or something, you know. But it's not the purple you think. It's more of the purple the linen was made with. So if it had purple intertwined with it, it's not a purple that we think is like, I guess violet would be more like the color purple we think of, isn't it? So it's not that kind. It's more of a red than a purple. Even though purple has red in it, but. Well, this is more, what? Scarlet. Yeah. Burgundy, I know. It is burgundy, but it has a red flavor more. Look at verse 22. It says, she makes coverings for her family. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. So she again, the principle is she wants the best for her family. You know? I'm going to be honest, I found some really cool things in Salvation Army and Goodwill once in a while, you know? Rich people love dumping their clothes after about 5 times wearing it. It's really weird. You know? I even tell some of the guys, before you die, all I want is that shirt. I see in people, you know? Because I know they've only worn it about 3 times. So, and I can wear it for like every day, nobody'd know it. So, when I die, anybody can have any of the uniforms they want. But the virtuous woman makes her family feel regal. How's that? Her virtuous woman makes her family feel regal. And I like that too, because what it's saying is she's going out shopping with them, not Dad. Now, I'm reading into that, but that's how I feel. If I go shopping with my kids, just buy it. And, you know, maybe be happy, and I'll get home and Lizzie says, they can't wear that. Well, okay. You know. And I'm not talking about, again, pants down to your knees and shirts. I don't go for that either. So. It's kind of interesting. Let's have some fun. Go to Ezekiel 16. Go to Ezekiel chapter 16. I like pointing out certain things once in a while, you see. Ezekiel. He's a guy in the Old Testament. One of the major prophets. He's right after Lamentations. I know that helped a lot. 11:31 in my Bible. 16:10. Anyway, God's speaking to Jerusalem how He's going to take care of His people. And He says, I also clothed you with embroidered cloth and put sandals of porpoise skin on your feet. And I wrapped you with fine linen and covered you with silk. So God is taking care of His people. And how does He dress them? I love this. Let's go out for porpoise skin boots. Boy, you think the Animal Rights Society would like have a fit. What are you wearing on your feet? Flipper. The real flipper. Yeah, I mean, you know, like, oh, you killed a dolphin for shoes? Well, they did. They ate them too. Yeah, well. Yeah, that's. But the purpose for this is, though, to show you that there's things. Okay. Was the idea behind it is there's some things that God will see as regal. You know, it's kind of interesting because porpoise skin was also used to cover the tabernacle with. It's one of those interesting things. God's house that He set up here on earth was covered with porpoise skin. And so there's behind that is the idea that there's some regal significance. There's an idea that God's taking care of, putting the best He can on His house. Yeah, definitely water resistant. So, at least that's what the dolphin thought before he gave it up. Proverbs 31, verse 23. Proverbs 21, verse 23. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. And I looked at that and I said, wait a second. Since when does a woman have ownership kind of thing? Not the idea it's her husband. Not ownership, but her husband. And I'm sitting there saying, the place of the gates is kind of interesting. The gates is where all the business was transacted, where major decisions for the city was done. It was like the courthouse. It was also a place where law was discussed and laws were set. So if you said, my husband's at the gate, what are you saying? He's one of the leaders in the community. And I thought about it. I said, you know something? Who would I rather vote for? And I'm not trying to pass anybody's, my opinion, to vote. But I look at the wives of candidates too. And I said, what does she give her husband? How does she aid her husband as a woman? Do that for pastors too. Do that for people that are in leadership. Say, there's a wife. How does she support her husband? Does she make him better? Does she aid it? And I look at Laura Bush. I think that's a magnificent woman. The way she supports her husband. Carrie's wife kind of shakes me. Scares me, And everybody loves her bluntness and her... And I just... And it's personal. I understand that. I'm not saying don't vote, whatever. I think you all know, Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. But it's kind of interesting, though, as you look at this, and you've got to dissect the word sometimes. Because the elders have respect for him, not because of what he's doing, because his wife is virtuous. And look at this. It says her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. Now, how is... you say, well, no, it's talking about him. No, it begins with her. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Okay, but go back. Listen, just bear with me for a second. This chapter is written to who? By who? His mother, to tell him what? Actually, it was before that, but obviously he got caught in a rut. But what a future wife should look for? And this is basically saying to him, yeah. And what did Solomon do? Well, a good wife may be better. If one wife makes me better, will take me under. So he got the message, but he took it to the wrong degree. It's kind of interesting. I thought I'd sort of try and give my children a baseball mentality. Now, let me explain to you what I mean. You're allowed 3 strikes in baseball, but how many balls do you need to hit? You only need 1 pitch to hit. So what's more important? Worrying about the strikes or getting that 1 pitch that's right to hit? And most people say, well, I go out with this guy because I'm trying to see if he's worthy to be married. Well, there's criterion that God has for you. Here's the criterion. Does he fit that criterion? No. Then why are you wasting your time? Well, he may be the right guy. If he's not the criterion God wants, it's not the right guy. Period. Oh, but he's cute. I don't care. Because when he's my age, he's going to be ugly and old. It doesn't matter what you look like when you're 16, 17. I look at my baby picture, I go, golly, he's cute. And I go, that was me. He was cute as a baby. We all develop differently. The idea is not what the outside is. Does it match God's criterion for you? And if you look at that, why waste your time? Because what Solomon's mother's saying is, if you have the wrong woman, it will destroy you. And this man also wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, where he was being destroyed by the women in his life. And he says, I have it all. Not only do I have it all, it's kind of interesting in the book of Ecclesiastes. He says, not only do I have it all, I have more than it all. I have left over that I can get more than all. In other words, there wasn't a day that went by in Solomon's life that he says, if I had this, I'd be happy. Because he said, if I have this, I'd be happy. He went out and got it. And he still didn't lack for funds to get something else. So if he needed, oh man, that stud Arabian horse looks good. He had it. But that wasn't the happiness, because what happened was this was destroying him. All these women, because all he needed was the right woman. So when he sat at the gates and made his decisions, I'm sure he probably had her. If you read the Song of Solomon, whose book is that? Very interesting planet, and there's been a lot of theological discussion. Is that Solomon's right woman that he's after? Did he get her? Is it one that he should have had and she was for another? So it depends on how you read the book of Song of Solomon. But the idea behind it is he did come to a point he recognized who the right woman was. I don't know, and this is again, depends on which way you look at the book, if that was her and he got her, or he already had her. And finally he said, and if you read some of the nice things he says and the poetic language he says about his woman, don't try it with women today. Solomon? No, Nathan is. Yeah. Legs like cedar trees. I love that one. Oh, hey, when you walk, sparks fly. Those two branches rubbing together. No, but that's why I said don't use that. Don't write out a little love letter to your girlfriend or something and write, honey. Oh, no, what was it? You have skin like hair or something? Wow. See? Yeah, that's some weird. I never be a poet. Behind every great man that is respected is a woman of virtue. Behind every great man that is respected is a woman of virtue. It's funny, go back. I'm going to take some of you on a real bad trip. Go back to first and second grade, and the first thing you learned was George Washington. Who's his wife? No, don't be stupid. You know her first name. Martha. Isn't that kind of interesting? Think of how many great men that you studied when you were young. And we didn't learn that when we were 40 or 50 years old. We learned that probably in first or second grade, didn't you? Think about it. Mrs. Jefferson. I was going to say, who is Thomas Paine's wife? I think. You guys... never mind. Was Dolly Madison. Barely there. The virtue and moral excellence of a wife is a reflection upon her husband and commands respect from others. The virtue and moral excellence of a wife is a reflection upon her husband and commands the respects of others. And it's kind of interesting. As I'm doing this, and I get looks back from some of you. Remember, this is written to a man, not to a woman to change, necessarily, but for a man to know how to look for a woman. And I think most of the problems we have in society is what is a man looking for in a wife or a girlfriend? Yeah. The virtue and moral excellence of a wife is a reflection upon the husband and commands respect from others. The virtue and moral excellence of a wife is a reflection upon the husband, or her husband, that's what it should be, upon her husband, and commands respect from others. Respect from others. And it's interesting as we look at this, a man is told how to look for a woman. Go up to the common kid today, 16, 17, 18, and what are you looking for in a girl? She's got to be good looking. First thing they say, got to be good looking. Long legs, blonde hair, Tiger Woods' girlfriend, kind of thing. You got to look good. Okay? Oh, they did get married? See, I'm not up with the news. Well, we'll send them a present. Just forget to put a stamp on it. But the idea behind it is, are they looking? It's kind of neat. Think about it. What kind of respect would you have for a guy? I said, It's got to be in Proverbs 31 kind of woman. I'm going to look for that kind of, that's the first thing. That's maybe why God didn't give me a son. Yeah. Well, it said, what did it say? Go back to what it said. It's kind of interesting. Tie that back to verse 10. An excellent wife, who can find? In other words, it's a search. It's a search. It didn't say it's impossible. It's just a search. And most guys don't search. Most guys hunt, find, grab, pull in, say, I got. Yeah. It's like they got fishing. Pressure's up. We'll keep this one. And what a wife is to be. Teaching Solomon how to pick a wife. So back to verse 23. Of course. Well, let me ask you something. How many kids would go to Proverbs 31 and look for it? This is what a wife should be. So your kid, your son, is into Proverbs 31. What kind of kid are you looking at anyway? He's looking in the Bible for his resources. So he's lining up a little bit biblically too. I met a kid. I was fascinated. Sam would probably kill me, but I met a kid when I bought these desk chairs. What was it, Saturday? I was out of Colonial Christian. I met a kid out there, and believe it or not, I know the family. Major Chambers is a chaplain out at the Air Force Base, and met his son for the first time. I probably knew him when he was about this big playing soccer. What a genuine, good guy. I mean, you could just talk to him. And he says things like, yes, sir, no, sir. And there's respect there. And you just look at him and I say, man, I got 3 daughters. Which one you want? And that's what, because you're saying this is so rare today to have somebody walking up to you. I wouldn't do that to him. But you look at this guy and I said, well, we got to talking and I said, what's your plans in life? I would like to do this and this and that. And then he's saying what he's going to do. And I disagree with it, but, he wants to go to the Nazarene College. But I mean, he's got goals and he's got sights what he wants to do in college and after college. And you go, and I say, that's because he's had a biblical grounding. So would that kind of kid 5, 6, 7 years from now will be looking at us? I think he will be. And that's what we got to do is learn to train up our children so that they go back to this as a resource. What is in this? This is our manual for life, isn't it? And we got to spend time getting to know it. And most people don't say, hey kid, you want to know what you should be looking for in a wife? There it is. So, verse 24. She makes linen garments and sells them and supplies belts to the tradesmen. Again, this is talking about an expensive, another delving into trade and making some money. But this is an expensive sash she's selling, this linen garments, and sells them and supplies belts. This word belts here is chagor, Chagor. You don't have to necessarily write that, but I want you to know it's an expensive kind of a sash. It isn't like a little leather belt made out of whatever this is made out of, maybe fake leather of some kind. So, but the idea is she's savvy. Again, we're back to show you where we are in the outline, so we can get an idea. We're back to the idea of trade distinctives, and she's making an exchange there of things that are going on, and she's got talent to make money. Let's see, we got a few minutes. Do I want to stop here? Well, let me explain to you what it does here so you can, it's kind of interesting. It is a chiasm. It is a chiasm. Remember what I said a chiasm is? A chiasm may have point A, B, C, D, E kind of idea, and it may have an idea here, and the same points will go back this way. So you're making an X, and chi is the letter X in Greek, so it's a chiasm. So when you go like this, you make it point A to whatever point E or B or whatever, and come back down, and A will line up with A, B, C. So they're parallels. And the reason for it, again, it's a way to teach. Don't we teach some of the things we say? It's so repetitious, right? Other than the first words we teach our kid is no, 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 no. But we teach repetitively, and the best way to teach something, and I think, Mark, as a school teacher, you probably know this best, is to teach something one way, say it again another way, say it again another way, and somebody say, well, you just said that, but I didn't say it the same way. So what Solomon's mother is doing here is teaching him with different ideas, and right now this idea, 24, I think, lined up with where she was, I think it was like 16, where 14, where she's like merchant ships. She brings food from afar. So the idea is she's dealing with merchants. What is she dealing with merchants now? Well, she's selling belts. She's selling garments. She's using her hands again, being productive. What does women do? Oh, I make clothes. Okay. Can you make more than that and sell the extras? So that's what's happening with that idea. And then the strength now, verse 25, strength and dignity are clothing, and she smiles at the future. It's kind of interesting. I just want to see how far I want to go. Let's take a few minutes. Just look at this. Her clothing, she wears her strength. It's kind of interesting. What does she wear as her clothing? Strength and dignity. Strength and dignity. And it's talking about, again, her integrity, her character, her spiritual growth. People will see she's spiritually strong. People see her character, her integrity. That's why one warning I've always given women, you are charitable. You necessarily want to help people. So 70 people a month come up to you and say you want to help them, and you spread yourself thin, you'll lose your integrity because you won't be able to remember everybody you said you would go and help. So somebody will say, well, I remember so-and-so promised to help me once, but she totally forgot me. Because she totally forgot me, was so busy helping so many people, she forgot to say who she said. So sometimes you got to learn to balance on that idea too. But the idea is she wears it. Her code of honor is her integrity, her spiritual growth. A woman is virtuous because she allows Bible doctrine to produce strength and integrity in her life. Remember what this woman does? She trusts in the Lord. Remember we talked about that. This woman of valor trusts in the Lord. So we can, principle of doctrine, we can finish on these last two principles. Let's do that. We'll finish on these last two principles and pick up in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. 13th? You got 13th and 20th, right? We've got to talk about it. I'm having surgery next Wednesday night, so if I'm here at all, it'll be totally under the influence. So I'm going to try and be here. No, it'd be fun to drive one-handed and under drugs. It's kind of interesting because I called the lady today and they had down MAC for my anesthesia, not general. So I called her up because I don't want to know what's going on when they do this. So I asked her, I said, what is it? She goes, well, what they do is they put you like almost out but no tube down your throat and they give you a local, Novocaine. And I started giggling because I just got through telling Lizzie, Ricky Williams is thinking of coming back to the Dolphins. And everybody says his drug of choice used to be marijuana. I said, no, it's now Novocaine. Because every time he's going to get, nobody will block for him. He'll just be after the game shooting me everywhere. So I'm thinking of Novocaine. I said, oh, great. So the idea behind that is the virtuous woman walks by faith, trusting in the promises of God. And it's kind of interesting because right here in this verse is where we're talking about Ruth and Boaz. Initially, that's where we came from. This is where Ruth and Boaz meet, right at this verse. It's kind of interesting. Because it's the strength and dignity are her clothing. She smiles at the future. And the idea behind the future is the latter days. Now, what's the main thing most people have problems with? Is death. But she's looking ahead to the future and saying, no problem, I got it handled. Why? Because God's Word is so much in her, she realized God's in control of that. She is a woman of valor. She is the Isha Hayel. And she perfectly matches because when she walks by faith, trusting in the promises of God, so does Boaz, who is the Ish Gabor Hayel. See how they line up? Because remember we talked about Boaz and how he trusts in the Lord for the future. So that he can look at Ruth and say, I can handle it. Because he's got to redeem her at that point. Next one, last principle. The believer who places himself and his future in capable hands of God The believer who places himself and his future in the capable hands of God will smile or laugh in the face of death. No, or you can even say at the future, knowing his heavenly Father is in control. Let me say it again. The believer who places himself and his future in the capable hands of God will smile, laugh, or in the face of death at the future, knowing his heavenly Father is in control. You know, a few of us were talking about the sovereignty of God the other day. Is God in control? So if you're worried about tomorrow, what are you basically saying? That God's no longer in control. There's something I can't control. It's out of control. It's out of God's hands. It's for me to deal with. So you don't understand the sovereignty of God. God is in control. Does it mean you have no responsibility for tomorrow? No, you have a responsibility. There's a balance. It's kind of interesting. I'm getting ready to teach the book of Acts. I've been invited to teach at Faith for one Sunday. And it's interesting. Do you take a personal blame for the cross? Think about that. Do you personally blame yourself for the cross? That Christ was put on the cross? Well, you should. You were responsible. But so was God. So there's a balance there. It was God's plan for Christ to die on the cross. But someone had to nail him. Somebody had to nail him. So, and what put it there was still a balance. You still nailed him. Still nailed him. And I think that's where we had to be at. There's a strong point to say, yes, He did it for He did it for us. He died in our place. Wonderful. And but at the same time, somebody had to physically drive the nail. And what He did was He paid for whose sins on the cross? Yeah. And you and me. He wouldn't have got on the cross if it wasn't for you and me either. I mean, everyone. I'm not saying just adjust us, but I'm just saying there's certain realities we got to understand. Do you take responsibility for? And what's being said here in Proverbs is take responsibilities, but at the same time trust God because He holds the future in His hands. And you could laugh at the future where people. I'm going to tell you something. You want some trying test discussing something with everybody? Ask them. Walk up to somebody in the store and say, "What happens if you die right now?" I know that's really blatant, but you'll freak them out. You'll absolutely freak them. You'll freak them out. Yeah, be watching because they may say, "Test it on 3." You know, but I'm saying people don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Their biggest fear is death. Think of every major drug seller in the world today. The drug that's one of the number one sellers is why? Because they're trying to stop death today. If I could live 1 or 2 more days. And then, you know, I already told Lizzie, I get a certain point in my life that I need drugs to sustain me. I don't want it. Why am I going to prolong happiness? Because this isn't where our final place is. If this is happiness, this is it. If this is all, I'm looking for what's that song we sing? Big backyard, big house. Oh, I'm going to go play ball. What's that? Never going to know. And that's the sad thing. But I like how it words here that basically when somebody starts talking about the future and death, she goes, "I got it made." And that's wonderful testimony. And I think some of us as Christians are too depressed about everything in the future and everything, and just don't realize God's in control. So let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father God, we thank You for this time. And even though we didn't finish with our subject matter, the principles were laid before us. That this woman is totally dependent on You, but at the same time she leads a responsible lifestyle. She cares for her family. She cares for others. She's available for the needs for others. And yet at the same time, that kind of a woman exemplifies and helps lift up her husband. And Lord, help us as we come to the times of the search for both the Ish Gabor Hayel